and welcome to our very first episode of the Success Formula podcast. I am Jentry Kelley, and this is my husband,
Shawn Lynch.
So we decided to do this podcast together because, I don't know, Shawn, I'll let you tell me actually why you wanted to do it, and then I'll say why I did it.
A couple reasons I wanted to do it was I feel like the traditional education system, I think, has failed everyone now. I believe nowadays that people learn through, there's so much information on the internet. And if we can bring value to somebody that when they're growing up or even in the middle of their life, this information is super important to people nowadays that they didn't have it before.
This may surprise you, but I don't listen to podcasts. I think I've maybe listened to less than 5 podcasts in my life. Shawn literally always has his headphones in, never listening to a word I'm saying because he's listening to podcasts. So he felt like he could provide education and, help to people who are interested in starting their own businesses, kind of like telling his story and interviewing people. Kind of the same thing with me. Every time I get an interview, they always ask, how did you do it? Did you have an investor? Did you get a loan? How did you do it? So I thought it would be good to tell our stories on this first one before we start interviewing other people so you know who we are and what we're about. So Shawn, let's start with you. I guess we can start now maybe with what you're currently doing and then kind of rewind the camera to how you started. So what are you doing today for work? Because in the past, a lot of people have messaged me and they think you're a stay-at-home dad because he doesn't really have a social media. He doesn't really, I don't really talk about what he does that much on social media. So everyone thought you stayed with Liam. So tell the people what you're currently doing starting now.
They only thought that because I'd walk in my workout clothes every day, and that's the only time he'd video me. And
he brings me coffee.
Bring you coffee.
Bring me coffee to bed every single day because it helps with my poop. If he doesn't bring my coffee and I get up and walk around, I don't poop. So he knows how important my pooping is. So he brings coffee to bed every single morning, and he's such a great dad with Liam.
I go work out, come home, have to make her coffee. She's still in bed. And then that's the morning routine.
I'm just not a 5 a.m. person like you.
I don't even know how you lay in bed and sit there and work. I have to get up and start moving around and make something happen.
Not me. That's why we're different. I feel like I have to kind of plan my day. I have to wake up slowly, have my coffee. I like to spend at least 1 hour in bed planning out what my agenda is going to be, making my phone calls and setting up my day. That's just how I work. He's different. He just goes straight to the gym. No, thank you. Not for me. But anyways, let's get back to business. What are you currently doing for work and investments? And then I'll ask questions about how you got started.
I'm managing partner at an oil and gas service company. We deliver frac sand to a bunch of publicly traded customers, do the logistics, the on-site services, and we continue to invest in real estate, commercial, a little bit of residential spec building, but mainly commercial buy and hold and rentals. And that's currently, and we're buying other businesses. We're investing in startups, software, other oil and gas rental companies, medical now.
So you're basically saying this is not an easy answer. You're kind of all over the place.
All over the place.
So he is very well diversified. He does a little bit of everything, but you started back in the day, I would say probably, I'm going to go with the year, maybe 2002 or 3 in the industry of owning a gym. And at the same time, you were simultaneously starting in your own real estate business. So let's start with how you made the money, how you secured your first little stockpile of cash to start your first investment flip home. So let's talk about the gym first.
I was working at the gym, was living with my parents. Living with them, I had no bills besides a car note and a cell phone, which I would recommend to anybody that's young. Just stay at home as long as you can and save up as much money as you can.
Eating chicken and rice for every meal.
Yes, and wearing the same
very little on clothing. He wore the same t-shirt and jeans.
Same pair of jeans, same pair of shoes every single day, but then I could go buy a new t-shirt every once in a while. It kind of made
an affliction t-shirt.
Kind of made it look, no, it was like surfing t-shirts.
It's definitely the puka shell necklace, an affliction shirt when I met you.
Very low cost to do that. So I ended up saving $20,000 roughly while I lived with my mom. And I was able to save up enough to use a first time home buyers program
which is an FHA loan.
Yeah. I bought an old 1940s or 50s house. Using an FHA, you're only able to put down between 1% and 3%. And they pay, and then usually the seller will pay your closing costs because you can roll it all into the loan. So it only cost me a couple grand to get in the house.
And you can only do that for your first home, right?
I think so, yeah.
That's what I recall is it's a one-time deal. So make sure when you're buying your first home that you go that direction because it's a way that you can do this without putting 20 or 30% down.
Correct. And so I was able to do FHA. And then so my remaining money, my $18,000, I was able to use to fix up the house because I bought an old piece of shit that needed a bunch of work. And so it was livable. It wasn't like a foreclosure where all the windows were broken out. It was a livable house, but just needed a bunch of cosmetic updates. And so I'd go to work all day long, work 8 to 10 hours, make $10 an hour plus commission. And then I would come home and remodel the house. So I'd put the towel under the door, live in the master bedroom at night, and then work after I got off work all night till like 2:00 in the morning, wake up, walk through a shithole to go to the kitchen. It's all torn out, and then make my food on the stove that's still there, and then go back to work and do the same thing every day.
Well, I know a lot of people are probably thinking, how did you know how to do that stuff? YouTube was kind of a thing, but they didn't really have a lot of how-tos back then. How did you learn how to do tile? How did you learn how to do sheetrock? Were you watching the contractors? Was your partner the guy that was helping you in the beginning? Was he showing you how to do it? How did you really learn the hands-on stuff to save money on contractors?
So the owner of the gym at the time, which became my partner, I was working for him, and he was super handy, hands-on, could fix anything. And so he's the one that kind of guided me. He helped me a little bit. He went over there and kind of started me out and said, this is how you do sheetrock. This is how you patch something. This is how you do trim work. And so he was able to help me a little bit. And then I did a lot of the work myself.
Did you hire any contractors for your first home?
I did. I think the only contractor I hired was a tile guy that was a buddy of mine, and I helped him. So he's able to do it for super cheap, but I sat there and helped him the whole time, learn how to lay tile. That was all of the main part of the house. And so I was able to do the bathrooms and stuff by myself.
So I think that's also very helpful too for someone who's first wanting to do this. I mean, if you're wanting to do this and stay completely hands off, it's going to really eat into your profit margin if you're paying trade to do all this stuff. And I think today, because I did the same thing with my first flip home too, that it makes me appreciate the work and really understand why they're charging what they're charging and what the work is supposed to look like when you have a basic concept and understanding of how it's done. So would you take that all back if you had to do it all over again and hire trades even from the very beginning so you could have moved a little bit faster? Or do you think that was beneficial for you to actually be in there doing it yourself?
No, definitely beneficial.
And you would recommend that to someone else interested in doing this for the first time, to do it all themselves the first time?
Most of it, yes. I think it helps because then when you go try to do 2, 3, 4 and you're managing crews, you know exactly what to do.
I agree.
Also, I had a just normal 9-to-5 job, and it was just enough to pay the mortgage on the house. So nothing was ever going to happen. I had to pay a mortgage somewhere, whether I lived in an apartment or in a house. So I definitely recommend that to someone that's young because...
So basically what you're saying is don't quit your 9-to-5 and jump into this. Keep doing both. Like if you really want to do this and you want to make this successful, same thing, I agree with Shawn. Don't be afraid of the hard work because that's only temporary, right? Until you learn the ropes. But I think keeping your full-time job so you have that guarantee so you can pay your bills and doing it yourself just makes you appreciate it. It helps you make more money so you can do another project right behind it, not fall flat.
It's such a good thing for anybody starting out, even if they're been in their career for 20 years, but to go do a house, and because you can still do it in your spare time, like after work, or even if you hired people to go do it, you could go manage it after work and you can go manage it before you go to work. So it's a very good thing if somebody's looking to invest and that wants to make bigger chunks of money outside of their normal career 9-to-5 job. It's like the perfect investment someone could do.
So I know this was a really long time ago. The numbers look really different post-COVID of how crazy real estate has gotten in the Houston area. But do you recall what you purchased the house for, what you invested in the home, and what you ended up selling it and what your profit margin was? Do you remember those numbers?
So it's around $80,000 I invested in the house. I spent the remainder of all my money. So I had $18,000 left. I spent all of it. I had $0 left in my bank account, but I had enough to pay the mortgage, but the house was finished. Put a little bit of furniture in it, couch, and just almost like bachelor pad looking, but at least it looks semi-okay.
And how long did it take you to sell that house?
From start to finish, I think it was probably a year, just because I worked on it for 6 months. I probably lived there for 6 months before I actually listed it. And it was my first one, so I was learning. And then I was working most of the time, and it sold for about 135 or so.
Okay.
So after realtor fees and the mortgage interest I was paying for the year, I netted around 30 grand.
Okay, that's pretty good.
And then I had my 20 back. So then I had about 50.
Oh, okay. Got it.
And so I took the 50 and was able to do the same thing. And this was back in the no doc days. So you could actually get a loan.
I remember that. Prior to 2007, you would just not even turn into paycheck stuff. I think it was just,
do you have your driver's license? Is a yes?
Sure. Here's a $500,000 home. You're welcome.
It was called a no doc loan. You needed no documentation of anything. And so it benefited me. A lot of people used it to go buy bigger houses and that's the people that it got in trouble underwater. Me, I was like, I knew what I could afford, but it allowed me to go buy another house for 5% down. So I was able to put 5% down on a little bit nicer house, $120,000 house, remodeled it, did the same thing, used some of my money, but I had a little bit of money left over.
So when did you start doing multiples at a time?
On the third one.
Okay.
So then on the third one, I was able to move into something.
That's when you got a little taste of that heroin and you couldn't let go. So
Yep.
Shawn's obsessed. He can't help it, and he can't work slow. He has to work fast. So by the third house, he has 2 houses now that you're doing at the same time.
2 houses. I had one to live in, so I'd pay the mortgage on, but then I had enough cash reserves, still working my job, and then was able to buy another one, manage crews because I knew how to do everything. So I just started, and I've gotten screwed by contractors. It's going to happen to everybody. But at least if you know how to do the work when you're showing up, you know what to do to try to manage a job correctly and not lose a bunch of money.
So by the time you met me, I think that was like 2008, late 2008. How many homes had you done at that point?
Probably.
I feel like it was like less than 10-ish.
Probably 8 to 10-ish.
So I remember the night I met you, I was like, oh my God, this guy knows about real estate. And I had kind of been dabbling in that too. I had bought my very first foreclosure, had sat empty for 2 years. I did also get an FHA loan, Fannie Mae, Frannie Mac, whatever the hell it was called. And I think mine was like 3% down. Mine was also like a no-doc loan. I remember they dug through my accounts a little bit to ask where money was coming into my account, but it was not a big, long process like it was later on for my second and third home. Mine was, I think, $69,000. I bought it on like an eBay website and did the work myself. I was engaged at the time, did the work myself with a guy who was handy and learned how to do tile, sheetrock work, float and tape, paint, all the things. And then maybe 2 years after that, I was ready to start my second project and I had found an empty lot, but I did not know how to get a loan on an empty lot with no property on, like no home on it, no structure on it. It's harder to get land loans if there's no value to the land. You have to put like 50% down. And I didn't have 50% down. I was working at Neiman Marcus at the time. So I was able to prove some income because this is when they started getting kind of weird about, proof of funds and going through the whole process of where you're at and can you manage your percent to income ratios.
After
blah, blah, blah.
2008,
Yeah,
ton
it was
of regulations
This
came
was
down.
this was right. It was 2007. I feel like is when it all crashed. 2008, they started getting really strict. Long story short, I met Shawn one night and he was like, I can help you. I know exactly how to get you that land loan. And I can tell you this bank that I get land loans from and it's 10% down. So that's kind of how we met in our very first conversation together. We hit it off instantly, but didn't see him for like 4 months after, and then we met up again. But that's a whole nother story for another day. But bought that second property and then ended up not building a spec home. I got too scared. But I have learned a lot from him. I was helping you at the time, remember, because you were, at this point, you had started the online supplement business a little bit before we met. And that was really taking off. Shawn was working, 100 hours a week, locking himself in the room, printing orders all night. And I would help him kind of manage his property. So I learned a little bit more about real estate then. But let's back that up a little bit. Tell me about the supplement company. I think that's a huge achievement in your life and what kind of catapulted you to where you're at today. So tell me how you went from working at the gym to flipping houses to starting an online web store for the supplement business. So
again, my partner at the time that owned the gym, we had started doing a couple projects outside of the gym because I told him, I was like, hey, look, I'm going to go work for myself. Like, I want to go open my own business. I don't want to work for anybody. And he said, don't leave. Let's do something together. And so he ended up selling me half the gym, but luckily we had been doing real estate together. I had some extra money. So I bought half the gym, continued to run it. It was making money. And then I came to him one day. I'm like, why don't you sell the supplements that you have here online?
And what was his response?
Oh, he's like, no, low margins. This is, I know some people that did it before.
So this year was like 2004-ish at this point. So it was not too long after the whole .com crash.
It was.
And people like in his age group were thinking, no, it's not going to work. It didn't work. Everybody tried that. There's no money in that.
There's no Shopify. There's no Wix.
This is when you had to write
code
from scratch.
A guy that built a website. Yeah. And my first guy fucked us because it was so bad. And he came in and he charged me $2,000 and I was like, looked like it had some shooting stars or something on it. And I'm like, it looked like a green screen. Yeah, it was terrible. Anyways, we ended up finding the right guy. Or I ended up going back to my partner at the time and said, look, we have to do this.
So now he's really thinking no, because you just wasted $2,000 on this website and it was crap. So he's really, we're not doing this.
Correct. And then some time goes by, we found the right guy. I don't even know who introduced us to him. And he built it in like a week and it was amazing. And so we were able to start listing products. I was selling them at cost at first to try to get orders come in. And my partner's in there yelling at me like, you're just filtering money back and forth. He's like, you're buying it and selling it for the same price. I was like, it's okay. We're getting our name out there.
But back then there wasn't Amazon. I'm going to say Amazon probably existed selling books, but there was no Amazon. Who were your competitors back then? Bodybuilder.com and maybe GNC? You really didn't have a whole lot of competition.
There was very little. There was some small mom and pop websites. And then I think bodybuilding.com probably existed.
So you're competing with them. You're trying to be like the Walmart of supplements, getting in there with low price, working on volume just to get the loyalty in the business. And what happened in 2 or 3 years of owning the business?
So through a bunch of different tactics at the time, email open rate was high. Google AdWords were crazy good because
Priceless.
Yeah. And so the way I did it, I would buy a single product that no one knew about, but I would do the Google analytics on it and it had 500 searches on it, but nobody had a sponsored ad for it. And so that's how I was able to get cost per click ads for like 2 cents.
So you found products that there were searches on. They weren't super popular. You couldn't compete with the super popular items. You were getting those things just to reel them in to get them to your website, and hoping they would buy the popular items once they got there, kind of thing.
And so the conversion rate, extremely high, never happens nowadays, 85%. And the ad cost was super low because there's no competition. And so we continue to do that. And
so is that really a thing anymore? I've heard you say now it's just so different than the way it used to be. So 20 years later,
I'm out of the game, so I don't know all the new tactics, but it's very, very social media driven. It's just way different than it was. You can't use the internet changes every year. So there
was MySpace back then. People weren't using.
I don't even know if there was that. It was Facebook, early college Facebook, when only college people had it.
Yeah.
But
MySpace was before Facebook. Oh. And this was 2004. When I met you, we had MySpace.
Nobody was using it for business at the time. So they were using it for music.
There was no social media to help give you the push. Really, Google AdWords were really the only way you could do it to introduce people to your site besides outside of your retail store.
Google Shopping, eBay. So we sold on eBay.
Yeah, that's right. I remember that.
We sold on eBay concurrently and Amazon through another entity. And so within 3 years, we grew the e-commerce platform to about 12 million, but then we also did another 3 million 3 to 6 million in Amazon and eBay. We had a separate company. And so that's how we're able to get the revenue from 0 to 15 million in 2 years. We ended up getting on Inc. 500 fastest growing companies, but they only used one entity. You had to show them your tax returns.
So it was 11 million or something.
Yeah, it ended up being 12 million or something over a 3-year period. And we didn't even use it from when we started. We started the revenue about 600,000 and then it was to 12 million. I don't even remember what we were on the list, but we were able to make, decent money throughout that time. It was still a low margin business, a lot of competition, but still before Amazon and the 2-day shipments and the 1-day shipments. And so we were able to create a good name for ourselves and then open stores all over Houston that we were the first ones to sell in the store as the same price online. So it was a hit. So no one did that at the time. It was like the store was double the price. GNC was super high.
Okay, that's shocking. I wonder why it would be more expensive because, the cost of shipping, you would think that it's the opposite.
The brick and mortar costs are higher.
Okay.
When somebody starts an online company out of their basement, they're shipping out of a warehouse and there's 3 people there. And so they're able to offer cheaper prices.
No commissions and all that.
We were the first offer, and the same as a store is the same online. And so those took off, did really well. During that time, I took everything that I made and invested in real estate. And
I remember this. I remember when I first met you, you were always talking to bankers borrowing against CDs. So CDs were paying a lot back then. 5% CDs that maybe they exist again, but they didn't for a long time. And you were buying CDs to make the percent and then borrowing against those. Am I saying this correct?
We were in some cases. And then some cases we'd actually just go and put a down payment on houses. Some cases I would use hard money at the time. So hard money is just a higher percentage, but less strict than a bank. So they would just loan on the asset and less on your income at the time. So you don't do 2 years of tax returns. They just say, hey, this is the appraisal of the property. We know it's a good deal. We're going to lend you money, but they're going to charge you way higher points than the bank would. So bank at the time back then was maybe 7%. So hard money was probably 12-ish.
Okay. So now we're to 2010, 11, 12. How many houses did you accumulate from doing this around that time? I think you were up to like maybe 50. Sorry, 30, 50?
No, we were probably in the 15 to 20 range, which we stayed at for a long time in single family residential.
And who managed those properties for you?
I did. It was terrible. Looking back on it.
I remember those phone calls. Oh my God. Mr. Shawn, our blinds don't fit in our windows. I need you to come change those out. Light bulbs.
We've had every problem known.
So our entire weekends were spent running to flip houses and checking on projects and him taking phone calls as a property manager on top of running the business, the supplement business. It was a lot to handle.
Doing everything, managing all the people, managing the warehouse, printing the orders.
Now let's talk about that. If you had that all to take back, would you have done anything differently? And I know you got to the point where you're like, this is just too much, and you sold off a lot of those properties because you didn't want to deal with them anymore. Would you have hired a property manager to help you manage those so you could focus more on your day-to-day business? Do you think you would have kept a lot of those houses, or do you think you found a good price to sell at a time and you just
I
offloaded them?
I think so. I think not a property manager, because I did try that one time, and I think what put a bad taste in my mouth was they were terrible. They just wrote checks for anything, and so there was no margin in those houses to go and just write checks for anything, pay any price. And so I think what would have been better looking back is more of an assistant type person that would just manage the calls,
Like work directly for
manage
you
the
and
houses, but also help me in general in the online business, just doing paperwork.
So
doing
what you're
documents.
saying is around 2012, 13, you
Should've
realize that you can only be as good as your assistant.
Yes.
And to hire more people to help you so you can focus on the things that you are better at. I hear you say that a lot. So
That was where my partner and I, he was great, but we had just different visions, and he wanted to be super hands-on and do everything yourself, which is good to a point, but then you can never grow past that. So you
cap yourself.
Yeah, there's no way me as one person can go beat a team of 8 people. It can't happen. I can't work enough hours in the day. And so that's what was happening. I was spreading myself too thin, trying to just manage that business because he didn't want to go and hire legitimate people that were better than us, that could go run that business better than us, which I wanted to. So we continued to operate that business for a long time, continued to operate all the real estate. We probably got up to about 20 to 30 houses at the time. I started buying commercial with a guy I met through my partner, which his name is Dino, and then his brother, Mike and Bo, which I still continue to invest with today.
So Mike and Bo, let me stop you right there. Shawn, like I said earlier, it doesn't really have a social media. He has one. He's an undercover brother. You don't even know he's there. He's a silent stalker. He went on a podcast with Mike and Bo. They have a real estate investment course, online course and podcast, and they just chop up little clips and put it on social media. So Shawn gets on their TikTok, and by the, second or third clip, he hits 2 or 3 million views on one platform, on one video about Christmas lights. And I'm like, how come I have been doing this for 12 freaking years on social media and I had not had anything over 200,000 views? So since then, things have changed. I had my first viral video, but I'm just like, that's so frustrating. Shawn's like, see, I told you, this is what you need to do. The social media expert who has no social media, go for it, Shawn.
It was only me from just studying everyone else on social media for 10 years. You actually have what it takes. And that's why I was so frustrated, as it wasn't about the clip. I'm terrible on camera, terrible at communication. And it was about the hook, the editing,
providing
the
value,
timing and the value. And so it wasn't just the one clip that went viral. There were some other ones that did too. And again, it wasn't me. It was just the way the edit was, the way the hook was, in which you're starting to do, and things are in providing more value, and it's starting to take off.
That's one thing about Shawn, regardless of what industry he is in or talking about, he just has this innate quality where he just gets it when it comes to business. He watches these fine details and knows how to execute. I always just say he's a professional executor. He's really, really good at making shit happen because he studies other businesses and how they become powerful and successful and how things take off. Always trying to give me his opinion. Sometimes I get frustrated. I'm like, you don't know anything. And he turns out to be right. So here we are today.
I think that to be successful in anything, you always have to just keep asking questions, learn to keep growing every day and learning. Like if the people that think they know everything, you'll get capped out.
And I do know everything. And I'm right 90% of the time, Shawn.
Yes.
But I have heard, and I'm actually learning myself, sometimes you got to stop talking and listen. And when you listen to somebody, when you're with somebody who's super powerful or become really successful, just listen.
The only thing that, not the only thing, but the thing that amazes me about you is you don't really listen to anything. You don't look up to anybody. You've just always just
I really don't. People always ask, especially when I used to do a lot more fashion shows back in the day. I cut that out. I don't really do that anymore. But like Fashion Week in Houston and, local fashion shows, people say, what are the new trends? And I'm like, I don't know. And I don't care. I don't care what everyone else is doing. I want to do what I think looks right. Of course, I like to get feedback from my team. And I do look for inspirations, but I don't really fall into trend of what's in for the season. And I think especially with my brand and what we do and keeping things simple and easy, my clients don't really want that anyway. But I just feel like I got good taste with design stuff. So I just feel like I just do whatever I would wear and what I would use. And it kind of works out for me that way.
It always amazed me how that you were able to do that. And then there's some benefit to that too. I don't look at other competitors necessarily because we now always try to be innovative and the leader. And then everyone.
But I think that's kind of important now with social media. You got to see what other competitors are doing because social media and the IT techie stuff is just moving so fast. So you got to have a basic idea of what everyone else is doing. But, when you went into the oil and gas industry, I think that's what your point of difference was, is you were looking at everybody else and you were like, what the hell is this, like the dinosaur age over here? Like people are doing paper logs. There's nothing, there's no, you know, app situations. There's no tracking.
The business partner in the oil and gas space, he created the first app that did logistics, tracking BOLs, and took it out of the paper stage. And so luckily he's super innovative. I am too. And so it was just a good match, and we both had the same vision. And so we're always pushing the limit on everything. And so that's why we continue to innovate in oil and gas, and anything we invest in, the same thing.
So how did you jump from the online supplements to the oil and gas? How did you meet Lambert, who is your current partner? What did you guys do together? And how did you jump into oil and gas at right before a really bad time in oil and gas?
Lambert and I used to build houses. God, I've known him for 15, 17 years now, but we started building houses.
Not that long. No. Let's back it up, because I met Lambert first. Remember, I introduced you to him because he was building houses in Clear
Lake. But it was right at the same time we met. It must have been right at the same time.
So it was, we met in 2008, started in 2009-ish. So yeah, I guess it's been almost 15 years.
Yeah. So known him about the same time. We didn't start building houses until probably maybe 10 or 12 years ago. And that's how I met him. We would invest in projects together. He was a builder in his previous life. And during the 2008-2009 crash, he couldn't sell any houses because nobody's buying anything. And so he flipped over to oil and gas. I think somebody he knew was moving product. And so he's just really good at seeing an opportunity and putting the pieces together. And so he started moving some ceramic sand from China all the way to the United States. And back in when they used to frack, they used man-made sand. And so this is before they're just digging out of the ground now.
Like plastic beads.
Yes.
Back in the day. Was it silica? Was it called silica, or was it ceramic prop?
Ceramic prop, yeah. That's how he got into the oil and gas industry, which evolved into logistics and on-site services as the fracking industry evolved.
So you're still building homes with him on the side, like,
correct.
You know, you would invest, and then he would do the labor part of it and manage it. And y'all did, you know, I don't know, 4 or 5 houses together. And then you're like, I work really, really well with this guy. So when he introduced you to, hey, there might be an opportunity to buy the other half of this company, are you interested?
I tried to buy his partner out years and years before, early on.
He told you to F off?
Yeah, he just wasn't ready to sell. But the timing worked out because we ended up selling the online company. And I called Lambert and I said, hey.
I feel like that happened pretty quick. I was thinking, once you sell this online company, what the hell are you going to do?
I knew.
And I felt like it was within 3 to 6 months. It was quick.
Yeah. And so, I called him and I said, hey, we should try to buy your partner out again, or I should try to buy your partner out again, because I don't have anything to do right now besides, you know, still investing in houses, but I'm going to go start something else. Let's try this first. And if it doesn't work, I'll go do something, but let's try it. And the timing worked out. They had just sold their original software that they created that changed the industry to a publicly traded company.
Remember that was
Prop
called?
Dispatch.
Okay.
It was the first BOL tracking system, track the trucks, the mileage, the hours of service, and automated the invoicing, which was never done before. They had just sold that software to a publicly traded company. And then, so his partner was like kind of ready to get out. And he was just fed up with the oil and gas industry, the cyclicalness of it. And so timing worked out, able to buy him out. And then we grew the company year over year. And then 2020 happened. I think it was 2020.
And literally it shut down.
We had the best first quarter ever.
Yeah. It was March 2020.
And then zero. It was really tough for us because we had such great people working for us, and we had just built like a good infrastructure to where Lambert and I weren't doing everything, and we were still involved, but we were more managing. But
you took advantage of the PPP loans couple times, and then you started hauling what? Grain? Did you start hauling grain for a minute?
We did over the road stuff. The PPP loan did help us, and we spent way more than that on just trying to keep everyone, because we had zero revenue all the way until.
Well, a lot of times that happens, like oil and gas companies, they just shut it down.
We didn't know.
And so how long it's going to last.
We had no idea. And so how long do you keep the thing going and paying for 100 people to work for you when there's no work? But you know, you need the people. If it came back, you have no business. And so we kind of gambled. The loan got us a couple months worth. I mean, it wasn't long. And so we had to float the bill for the rest of the months and then finally one of our customers came back a little bit early. It's 1 well and then 2 wells. And then we slowly climbed our way out of it, barely, but we were able to keep all of our people come out a little bit stronger on the other side. Couple of our competitors filed for bankruptcy, helped us a little bit that we were able to hold it all together. And then during that time, all of our customers there was no trucks available. So they're like, you have to own your own trucks. And so we went out and bought 150 trucks.
And you were the only person really doing CNG trucks at the time. So it was a huge tax credit when you're, using CNG trucks, right?
We were the only carbon neutral oil and gas logistics carrier because we went out and purchased 150 trucks that offset our emissions.
But then you quickly realized that nobody really cares about carbon emissions.
It was really good for a while at the time. And then over time, it just becomes, we want the lowest price. We want the lowest price. There was a couple customers that did care, to be fair. But if you take the majority of them, it was 10% of the people really cared about the emissions. And, Chesapeake was one of them. And one of our other partners was too. So anyways, leads us to owning a bunch of trucks, a bunch of assets, and now having an asset heavy company and a bunch of people. But today we continue to do pretty well, but it's always up and down. I mean, there's no consistent schedule. There's one day you'll have 5 wells, the next day natural gas crashes.
A lot of stress. And most people can't manage and deal with the ups and the downs. They don't know how to, or they don't save up enough to be ready for the downfalls.
That's the biggest thing in business is I think people, when times are good, you have to save everything you can because it is always going to be bad for a little while. It could be a pandemic,
and that's actually
could be something else.
That's actually what I did. I always felt like in my life something bad was going to happen. It was either going to be a war. I didn't think a pandemic, but a war or something bad or a decrease in sales for a little bit. So I, for the first 3 years of my business, didn't pay myself. I stockpiled all my cash, and by year 5 or 6, I had a pretty good amount of cash saved up. And then I started, bought my building, started investing in more and more inventory. So when COVID happened, I had about $2 million worth of inventory, which was great because I had something to sell when all the manufacturers closed down. So I had a backup plan. But if I wouldn't have done that, if I wouldn't stockpiled the cash, I wouldn't have been able to pay my employees. If I wouldn't have stockpiled the inventory, I wouldn't have the products to sell because it was huge manufacturing interruptions for years, like 2 years after all that happened. So I do 100% agree with you. Is you got to have your nest egg. Don't be a $30,000 millionaire when you make your first buck. Don't go spend it on buy a Ferrari. Take your time. It'll come. Just be prepared for
I think
those
that's
things.
where social media skews it a little bit nowadays because you think everybody's doing good, and it's not that way. And when you do start a business, you have to invest every penny back into the business. The one thing my original partner did teach me is he's like, never be a burden on the business, and we never pulled money out of the company. Drew a very, very little salary, even though the company was profitable. But we used to reinvest the business, grow the business, and then invest in more properties. And over time, yes, it will work out over time, but it's not a get rich quick thing. And then that's where most people, I think the social media really skews the $30,000 millionaire because the minute they make money, they go buy something so they can show it off on social media. And it's just not the reality. In business, it's hard and it's a lot of investing. I invested everything I had, everything I made. I would put it all back in every year. I'd put it into properties. I was very, very cash poor for a really long time. For the first 15 years of my life.
It finally paid off. And I think it's the patience that a lot of people don't have to wait. And I remember someone telling me, someone I really respect still today in the cosmetic world who has done great things with her companies and has bought and sold for hundreds of millions of dollars. She said to me, you will not make money for 5 years after starting your business. And I'm like, yes, I will. I always had a job in the beginning, another job outside of my cosmetic line to pay the bills. And if I sold anything with the makeup side, it was just a bonus, but it meant I was going to have to work after work. But I didn't pay myself. I was able to pay myself from doing weddings, working inside the retail stores. And that's really how you make it work. And it was about 4 or 5 years before I started making, I wouldn't even say it was decent money. My very first paycheck, I think, was maybe $1,000 or $2,000 a month. Yeah. I made less than everybody else for sure in my business. And I know I didn't write my first paycheck until somewhere after year 3. Because I said, once I hit $1 million total in sales, not per year, just $1 million total in sales, I'd write myself a paycheck. But I knew that by writing that paycheck, it was going to take away from my inventory. And I needed more inventory to make more money. Because for every tube of lipstick that I sell, I could have bought 2 or 3 more. And I knew that. And I learned that a lot of that from you too. Shawn has always been a big inspiration for me watching him. And I'm like, well, I know I'm smarter than him. So if he can do it, then I can do it. But I did learn to not spend everything that I made and really watch it and live very frugal for a very, very long time, which is what I did.
There is a point that it will pay off, and that's the whole goal, right? At some point, you can do whatever you want. You have more freedom. You have more freedom of your time.
To be honest, I've been doing this for almost 13 years now, and I didn't start making real money until year 9 or
No,
10.
and you still work.
It really took me. I was just a regular making what all my other employees were making until about year 9.
Yep. And you still work 60 hours a week. And
I've gotten better. I've started to,
yeah.
delegate out most of my thing. You have to have trust in your team. Like you said earlier, if you try to do it all yourself, you're capped at a certain amount. I was noticing that, me trying to micromanage everything and do everything myself and not having like a right team of management to help me out on the day-to-day operations, I was capped out at a certain dollar amount. I could not make more than that. But when I started to hire a team, I feel very hopeful that with this whole new Amazon thing that I'm doing, 15 years after you did it, selling on Amazon, really boosting up my marketing, that I can get my company to do $50 to $100 million a year, not just, peas and carrots where we're at now, because I'm trying to do it all myself. So I think that's so important to save your funds, have it there when you're ready to invest in big things, and have the right team below you to help.
That's why I knew you would be successful, because, or when I kept telling you to quit your 9 to 5, just because you have the drive and the personality. I knew you wouldn't quit, and I knew you were very good with your money, and that's all it takes. And you really just have to delay any gratification, and you'll be successful at some point. If you reinvest in the company and you're a pretty good manager and you have a good product, you will be successful at some point.
I remember thinking a long time ago, like, you have to have money to make money. I really thought, and I don't think I had the confidence in the beginning until I met you and learned and watched from you. I was like, well, I'm just not rich. I don't have rich parents. I really don't have a way to do it. I won't be successful, or I just had this like wall up that I couldn't do it. And I remember, when I was at work one day, you called every makeup line that you could think of. And you're like, well, I learned something today. They are all owned by Estee Lauder. But he was trying to get me and pushing me to start a website where I sold name brand products. And he didn't realize that it doesn't work like that. You got to have a brick and mortar and all that comes along with it.
It was a little bit different at the makeup industry at the time. It's different now with social media, and there's so many brands. But how did you have the balls to quit your job? And how much did you have in your checking account when you quit your job? I don't think I even know that.
So let's go back to the situation. When I was working at Neiman's, remember, I was literally, this is a very long, detailed story, but I'll give you the cliff notes. So we said earlier I was engaged to someone else. His name will be left unmentioned. He had a lot of mental health issues. There was a lot going on there. I barely escaped alive in that relationship. But during one of his meltdowns, his psychiatrist said to him, you need to find a hobby outside of Gentry. He decided he wanted boating to be his hobby. And he couldn't. He had really bad credit and couldn't buy a boat. So I was the one who bought the boat. And it was a yacht that I could not afford working at Neiman Marcus on my $60,000 a year salary. So when I met Shawn, I was, in that situation. I was, we were breaking up. I was stuck with the yacht, stuck with the house. I was paying for everything myself. And it was 2 years of working at Neiman's, literally writing my entire paycheck over to pay that yacht note, to pay for the repairs and maintenance, and to pay for South Shore Harbor, boat slip rental. I literally paid, standing on my feet, 40 hours a week, paid for that boat, because that was one thing. My dad and I did not have the best relationship, but that was one thing that he taught me, was don't be like your mom and spend all of your money. Learn from me. Always pay your bills on time. Your credit is your everything. Your credit is who you are. And it was so important to me that I did not ruin my credit through that, because I knew that I wanted to do the flipping of the house thing. I knew I needed credit to survive in life. And then no matter what, until that boat sold, which took 2 years, I had to stay working at Neiman's. So when I was at Neiman's, I couldn't save anything. I think I had maybe, and this is even, I had sold that first property that I told you guys about. I had sold that first property, made, I think maybe, let's just say $25,000 profit on that. And it was right around that time that I sold that house that I finally had a buyer for that boat. And I was still short with my profits, $13,000 for that boat. And I said it was going to be a short story, but short story long. Shawn wrote a check for $13,000, and he said, I know how hard you worked to continue to pay that boat, and I'm real proud of you. So here is a check for $13,000, the difference that you need to get rid of that boat for your negative equity. And I don't ever want to hear about that fucking boat ever again.
Even the owner of the marina, though, Tommy Tipton.
Oh, he's no longer with us, but he was such a good guy.
He said,
I'm so proud
Gentry,
of her.
I'm so proud of her. No one else would have kept paying that stupid yacht note.
I know.
And it's sunk and all the
But
repairs.
I'm so glad that, oh my God, yes, it was a lightning storm. And I was like, you should have just let it fucking sink. Why did anybody help it? Like the bilge pump went out, it was sinking. I'm like, let it sink. But yeah, we got rid of it. The guy bought it. He was from Florida. He went down the intercoastal waterway, and I was just praying to God that thing didn't fucking break down.
No, he was a handyman. He knew. He was like, I
was so scared it wasn't going to make
So it kind of worked out. He's like, look,
Anyways,
I'll take it at this price.
I sold the boat. And when I sold the boat, I think it was 2,000 or less in my account. By that time, this is fast forwarding some years, but you and I had broken up because you had literally worked 24/7. You locked yourself in the room every single night to print orders. We really didn't have a real relationship. You wouldn't travel with me. So I was like, I'm moving to Houston. I don't want to be out in Dickinson anymore. We were in the car like 3 hours a day. I just couldn't handle it. We remained best friends, but I just moved into Houston. And I remember thinking, customers kept asking me. I had left Neiman's at this point. I was freelancing, meaning I was working on a daily rate, working inside of all the different retail stores for the different cosmetic lines. And customers were still paying me to go to their house and do their makeup. And they kept saying, why don't you have your own brand? And I just kept thinking in my head, like, you got to have money to make money. I don't have any money. I can't do this. And one day I got a wild hair and said, you know what? I'm going to call the place where I knew Bobby Brown had started in New York. So I called him and said, probably what they hear 19 times a day. I want to start a cosmetic line. What do I do? And they said, we have an open house in New York in a week. And I spent all my money to buy a last minute plane ticket and hotel room in New York City. And I remember after that, I had less than $1,000 in my account after getting there. But thank God they took credit cards, and thank God I had good credit, because I had good credit. I had a credit card, an American Express card to be exact, with a $35,000 limit. So that's where I got the money from to start JKC. And it was maxed out by the time the cosmetic line came out. About 6 to 7 months later, I had launched with just,
How long did it take you to pay off the credit card? The original 30,000, or did you just chip away?
So what I did in the beginning, I started the line about 6 months later. Facebook business pages had just come out then. So I was posting on Facebook business pages that I had started this makeup line. Please come support me. I had some makeup brushes that I had private labeled from a trade show. I got those items pretty quick, and I was like, okay, so I want to share with you guys what I'm doing. A lot of you guys have told me and inspired me to start my own business. Please support. 200 people showed up, and I sold $10,000 in makeup. So that was more money than I'd ever had in my account, besides the 5 minutes before I paid off the boat. And I was like, you know what? I'm not going to spend any of this. I'm going to chip away at this credit card. I paid $2,000 minimum payment, saved a little bit of nest egg for that every single month on that credit card. And then whatever was left, I would buy more inventory with. And I was constantly sold out of everything. I didn't have enough inventory to, make more orders. So people were being patient and waiting 1 and 2 months for me to get more products in. So that's how I built my inventory. And I knew one day I'm going to be in a retail store. I got to keep buying more inventory, but I never made less than a $2,000 a month payment towards that American Express card. I think the minimum payment was $900, but I did know if you want a good credit, you never pay exactly the minimum payment. You always got to pay more. So I did that for, I think it took me over 2 years to pay that off. Mm-hmm. But of course, I was accumulating new charges and things like that. But I paid off the $35,000 investment, and nobody gave me a dime. I know over the years, people have made comments on social media or in person or behind my back that Shawn was my sugar daddy and all of this. But actually, we weren't even together when I actually went out and started my own line. And no, he did not help me financially with this. I did it on my own. Thanks, American Express.
She's never even asked me for $1.
There was one time I asked you for $1.
Did you?
There was one time when we were living in the Wick Wild house for the 3 weeks that we moved into your flip house. There was one time I asked you for money. I was doing that Houston Fashion Week, and they wanted me to donate 2,000 units of product for the 3-night event. And I didn't have the money to buy the 2,000 units of product, and it was like $15,000 or something like that. And I said, hey, I need you to give me some money to float this for me. And you said you would do it. But then I turned around and said, no, I'm not going to do it. I'll either didn't donate that much product. I can't remember exactly what I did. Maybe I gave samples instead, but neither here nor there. I almost did, but I didn't actually ever ask you for money. Just did it all myself.
The only thing I have ever given you is just advice every once in a while that she doesn't listen to that much anyways.
I always felt like I looked to you for stuff too. And one of the things that rings in my head that you always said to me is, when my employees would go off and start their own makeup line before I had a non-compete, or they would go and just do competitive things with me or take my business or whatever behind my back. And I would get so, emotional about it. He's like, number one is business. You can't get emotional. Number two, they will never work as hard as you. I see how hard you work. No one is willing to work that hard and as many hours as you put in and the traveling and the, forfeiting things in your life, like, friends' birthday parties, family events. Like, you miss out on all those things because your business is so important to you. You put your all into it. And there's not a lot of people out there that would be willing to do that. And I see when you come to a roadblock, you find a way around it. And if you continue to do that, you will always be successful because everyone else, when it gets hard, wants to give up, you keep going.
That, and they don't want to sacrifice anything. To be great at anything, sports or business, you have to almost obsess over it and sacrifice
be a little bit on the spectrum.
Maybe. Gentry messes with me all the time.
Shawn might be on the spectrum a little bit. It's not normal, like how he's so smart and he's so good. And like I said, back to the execution thing, he executes on everything that he says he's going to do. He does. And it's unreal the amount of, effort that he puts into his businesses and becoming successful. He never feels like he's working too much. Always answers the phone after hours. That's one of his big things is he doesn't like to work with people who don't answer their phone 24/7. Like he literally works all the time, but it never feels like it's work because he enjoys it so much. It's like an obsession with him.
I couldn't imagine doing anything else. That's why I think the third phase of my life is not, I definitely don't want to be.
Yeah. So when are you going to retire?
Never retire ever, but I don't want to be the CEO. I don't want to always be that. I'd love investing in companies now and being more of an advisor. And being able to steer it a little bit, but I don't want to be the operations guy. I don't want to be the CEO forever. That's what I don't want to do. But I enjoy business so much, I'd never retire. I enjoy real estate so much, I'd never stop. I'd continue to buy stuff. I'd be like a 9-year-old man buying buildings.
He can still be working. I'll be enjoying a margarita in Mexico somewhere in Tulum, probably. So I don't plan on working forever and ever like him. So I'm nowhere to the level of what he is with the amount that he works. I still work a lot. I'm more hands-on with my company. I feel like he's always like 5 years ahead of me with whatever he's doing. I do say one day I'm going to beat him. I'm going to start some company that's going to sell for more than one of his. It's always a healthy competition between us two.
You still might though. With the makeup line has a really good opportunity because of the multiples you get, and because all the old brands, they have to buy new up and coming brands to stay relevant. Whole reason Kylie Jenner just $500 million or $1 billion. It's the same thing. When you create enough demand like that, the older companies, they have to buy it. It's the same thing that happens with energy drinks and the beverage space. Coca-Cola, Pepsi, the larger Red Bull, they'll just gobble up anybody that starts to create a little bit of traction in the marketplace. But now it's all social media driven and influence driven. Most products are driven by some type of influence that somebody lends their name to. And that's the new way. All the new billionaires are social media people, not steel guys and, car manufacturers that it used to be. It's all just influence. They can lend their name to a company. They have that much influence. All of a sudden the company's doing $300 million in sales.
And they diversify and start other things with their brand. So we'll see where it goes. My goal is to get to $50 to $100 million a year in sales. I'd be really happy with that. And then you can sell for, at that point, the multiples are sometimes 4 and 5 times in cosmetics, where you can easily sell for $500 million if you're doing that much. Sometimes more if you have like unique items or patents or things like that.
I think you'll get there when you listen to my advice.
One day.
The advice that you're so good at marketing and being the face of it that you need to spend every second of the day on that and nothing else.
And a lot of my customers don't understand, like, why don't I ever see you on the schedule anymore? You're so hard to get into. I'm not that hard to get into. You can book within, 30 days out, I would say. But I'm only in the store now. That was one thing I gave up about a year and a half ago. I'm only in the store 3 to 4 days a month now. I still do the weddings. He keeps asking me, when are you going to stop doing those weddings? I enjoy doing the weddings, so I'm still doing it. I'm cutting back on the amount that I do. But I feel like I have to have social media content that goes along with my marketing, right? To be able to post. So I still need to stay relevant. I need to stay in the store a little bit. And I truly do. I don't want to give up what I truly love doing, which is being in front of the client and doing the makeup. But I have taken on the marketing role within my company. So I'm the one that's, working with the marketing guy to create newsletters, reels, working with Amber, videos. I'm doing 1 day a week now, 2 days a week filming. And I think, the more time I spend on that, the better it's getting.
Mark my words. The day that you start doing marketing
100% of the time,
100%, that's your only job. You're not ordering inventory.
I don't do that anymore.
I know you're not hiring people. You're not talking about hiring people. You're not even talking to nothing, zero
people anymore.
If you do marketing,
Shawn doesn't really know what I do
all week. That's it. Eat, sleep, and breathe. It will be a $50 to $100 million company. You will get there way faster than you think you will. So I'm excited. I know you'll end up getting there. I can see it. I can see the future. And so I want you to do that sooner than later. But you're slowly doing it.
And that's my reason, since you never asked me my reason, I'm just going to tell them my reason. The reason why I wanted to do this podcast is I want to get better at listening and learning from other people. Like the more I listen to Shawn, the better I get. He is right about a lot of things that I need to spend and focus my time on, especially with, the marketing side. But I think us interviewing other people that have become really successful in their businesses is only going to help, give me even more drive and give me more ideas of how I can, cut corners to get there faster and not waste time learning stuff from the ground up. So I'm really excited about this. I don't even know who our next guest is, but soon in the next couple of weeks, we're going to have our first guest on. We have about 5 people we're talking to. But we want people who are like-minded to us. They're willing to put in the drive and the energy and hopefully inspire you guys that are interested in starting your own business, that anyone can do this. If Shawn did this, living out of his first flip house, saving $20,000, eating chicken and rice, driving a piece of shit car that had seat covers on it, rolling up with the rim falling off. And I lived in a house, an apartment complex with cars on blocks when I got home and people getting shot. If we can do it and start with nothing, without an investor, you can too. And hopefully we'll give you some drive and information that helps push you over the line to do it yourself.
There's nothing more exciting to me about doing the podcast
than talking about
business. So I was like, hey, this is the best thing in the world. I get to sit around and meet super interesting people and just talk about business. I'm in.
Since I don't know a lot about podcasts, Shawn, I don't even know where we're hosting this. I literally know nothing. I've let him take charge on this because I'm so busy with JKC right now. Are they going to subscribe to a podcast? How does this work? I really know nothing.
I can tell you the first 5 or 10 people are going to be super influential and bring a ton of value to whoever's listening. I'm super interested in like preventative medicine, functional medicine. I hope to have some of those people on to help educate people.
And you know what? The people are way more interested in that than I thought they would. When I post about Shawn's 8 ingredients that he eats in his life, everyone's like, I want his meal plan. What does he do? Guy looks like Zac Efron without a shirt on. I'm over here like, fluffy muffin top. But he is so into health and fitness and life longevity and all that stuff.
It's just helped me so much because I dealt with anxiety my whole life. I've had all these other issues. And the way that I coped with it was working out originally.
Distracting yourself.
Pretty much. And then it got to the point where it didn't really work. I was eating semi-healthy. I didn't really know about nutrition. But now that I've really got into the functional medicine side and preventative medicine, I've learned so much and it's helped me a ton. And so I'm super vocal and I tell everybody about it. And so it's going to be really fun to have people on here, doctors, people that know a lot more than me about that can explain it to the audience and hopefully help them too. I mean, it's so amazing. And so we're going to have good guests like that on. We're going to have very influential business guests. I think it'll bring a lot of value to people when they actually hear us ask more detail about the operational side, because I think that that's what's lacking in the ones I listen to.
Is they glaze over how they got started and they immediately fast forward to self-promotion of what they're doing now.
I was sleeping on the floor and then I'm successful. And so I think there's a lot of missing information that would help me, because when I'm listening to something, I'm like, man, I wish they would have asked this question. Because I'm like, if I hear somebody actually say the operational side, I'm like taking mental notes, I'm writing it down, because all of that stuff is beneficial to the person that doesn't know anything about it.
And just like you said in the very beginning of the podcast too, the education system, even like college, I got a business degree. I had no fucking clue how to start a business. I didn't know how to do anything accounting related. And I took accounting classes. I didn't know how to manage a team. I literally learned nothing. There was no hands-on type experience, of real life equations in college. So like Shawn said earlier, what we hope to provide, maybe one day he'll have, courses where he can, not out of the gate, but he'll have courses where he can really be one-on-one with people. He's doing this with Mike and Bo now, where they have weekly Zoom calls where people can jump in and ask questions, like very detailed questions, or give details about properties that they found that they're interested in. And here's the numbers. And would you guys buy this? I think, one day Shawn and I, or maybe Shawn, who knows which direction this goes, will be able to offer advice and really, truly help people. How do you get that first loan? How do you build your credit up so you have, credit cards with large limits to start this? How do you, save $20,000 working a, $40,000 a year job?
There is so much information now. I know some people demonize social media. And there's always going to be, when something's that popular, there's always going to be some bad on it, but there's so much good.
Yeah. I asked him, I was like, I can't wait till you get your first troll that tells you they hate your hair, they think you have a big nose, that they tell you should cut that mole off your face. I can't wait for you to get your first troll. He takes the emotion out of it. He doesn't care. He laughs. I get all like wound up. He doesn't.
I don't care. That person must hate their life. Like to sit around and actually, but to even sit around and actually say a hateful comment to somebody, it takes a lot. Like you have to really be just mad at the world. And so I could care less about that person with blue hair sitting in their basement telling me that I'm ugly. I don't care.
Yeah, I've been told about 19 times since my video went viral that I should cut the mole off my face.
And so I do think that social media, the information that's available nowadays is so powerful. And when I was a kid, if this was out there, I would have been.
You would be a billionaire already.
Oh yeah, I would have fast forward me and skipped 10 years of learning. And although execution does help you learn because you make mistakes, and at some point you just have to do it. But there's so much information and coaching out there now that you can just shortcut your way to not making as many mistakes. And that's what a lot of the online stuff is. I'm sure there's a lot of bullshit out there too, but there's a lot of credible people that can provide a ton of value. And so that's one of the reasons I wanted to do it. I do think I can eventually help people someday. I don't think the traditional education system is valuable anymore. College is not valuable. And it wasn't really valuable 20 years ago, but now.
By the way, Shawn did not go to college. He went for 5 minutes and
6 months or so.
And for him to be a multimillionaire, I'm sorry, I'm spreading your business, but be a multimillionaire without a college degree, it's definitely not unheard of today. But I think people, you just couldn't wait to get out there and start working. But I think people think that they have to follow the guidelines that their parents are giving them. And you felt like you wasted your time. And if you wouldn't spent that first 6 months in college, you could have started earlier, right? But we want to provide value that you're not getting in school, more of the hands-on experience. So we hope that by interviewing these people that have become really successful, that you can gain this knowledge. And like I said earlier, get you over the start line to feel inspired to do it on your own. So let's get back to, for now, we have an Instagram and TikTok called The Official Success Formula. You can follow us there and we will alert you guys on which platforms that the podcast will be hosted on and how to watch on YouTube. And you'll be seeing clips hopefully all over the interweb. So thank you guys for watching.
And we do have a couple ideas about real estate that I think if I document a couple things, it will show the listener or the audience that it's very easy to do.
So I'm going to help him this time learn how to create a reel on Instagram and on TikTok. So he's going to be putting videos up and we will tag when this comes out what his new handle is going to be on Instagram and on TikTok.
The selfish part about the podcast for me is to be better at communication, learn a little bit about social media because I know zero as far as the operational side. I do know what works.
Thank God we have our producer, Brian Williams, back there in the back. Thanks, Brian, for being a part of this.
Brian is very talented, and I'm sure he's going to make everything we do look a million times better than it really is.
I mean, we used to have a reality show on YouTube,
which was very good. The
Blush and Needle or Brush and Needle. Yeah. I can't even remember the name of it.
The production was so good. I was like, man, Brian's he has the eye for editing and the music and everything. I mean, it looked just like Kardashians, or just the quality of it and the style of it. And that was 6 years
Brian,
ago.
I paid him to say all these nice things about you. None of it's accurate.
God, that had to be a while ago. Anyways, there's a lot of cool stuff we have coming out besides the podcast that should create a ton of value for
and just like anything that we do, we don't really know when we start what we're doing. This is what Shawn has no plan going into stuff. He just no plan. He's just going to get in there. He just does it and kind of see where it takes him. And sometimes things go in a completely, like the oil and gas thing. You would have never thought that you were into some of the things that you're starting businesses now, which you guys will hear about in the podcast. You had no idea you were going to go that direction, but you've met such a great group of guys, started some new businesses with them. I know you're going to start more businesses once you guys sell that one in the months to come. So
that, and I do think that the person at home, if they're listening, I think you can listen to all the books you want, listen to all the podcasts you want, but at some point when you have enough information, you have to execute. You have to, and that's how you learn. That's how you learn. You learn from your mistakes. You get better. The person that just starts, as opposed to the person that just ponders and waits for 5 years, that person's going to be...
Which is probably what I would have done with the podcast. I would have talked about it and wouldn't have actually done it.
And it might not be perfect, but I guarantee you every one we do will be better than the last. And so
one thing I learned from this is I'm going to have to start wearing a diaper because I have to pee so fucking bad right now. So we got to wrap it up. We have so much to say. We're going to have plenty of other episodes. We will get to know more and more about us and our guests. But we're right at an hour now. So I think we nailed it on our second try. We did one practices for second try. I think we did a great job and introduced people to who we are and what this is going to be about. And we hope you follow along on our journey.